Hello and welcome to an episode of Ed Talks, where I'm having conversations with industry leaders on the hospitality industry in 2023 as part of Bums on Seats' campaign No to Last Orders, which is the fight against hospitality closures in 23. And today I'm joined by the lovely Katy Moses, founder and MD of KAM. Welcome, Katy.
Hello, Ed. Thank you so much for inviting me on. What a treat to see you in the first week of January.
Of course, the pleasure's all mine, Katy. So why don't you just start by telling us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about KAM, and really how are you guys looking to help the hospitality industry this year?
Okay, so I'm Katy Moses, as you say, founder and MD of KAM. I started up KAM around, I think it's 9 years this year, because I wanted to be able to put insightful information into the hospitality industry that actually can be actioned rather than just data sets, rather than something that just ends up in the bottom drawer. It was about creating an agency that gives insight in a consultative basis into the industry. As for what we're doing in 2023, well, post-pandemic, are we post-pandemic? Can we say that?
It's risky, but I'll go for it. Go for it.
Okay, I love a risk. Let's call it post-pandemic. Post-pandemic, we saw how resilient the hospitality industry has been. What we also saw is how much we rely on insight, how much we need to understand the customer and to make sure that every strategic decision that we are making within our businesses is aimed at and built around what the customer wants and needs from us. So in 2023, what I want to do is more of what we've already been doing for the last 3 years. I also want us to delve specifically into certain areas. I think sometimes we can be guilty of looking at sort of macro data of the customer does this. I think we need to start looking a little bit more into occasion and type of customer, and then cross-references that with style of venue, etc. Our first research report, most of what we do is bespoke, so we work with all of the major operators and all the people that supply into them. Our first major report, though, of the year, of which we release 3 or 4 through the year, is called Golden Years. So we're going to be looking at that 65 plus, which is an age group that we quite often forget about because everyone obsesses about Gen Z. And you forget that actually these guys have got far more cash. So how do we keep them happy? How do we get them into hospitality? So yes, looking at the older generation is going to be my first focus for 2023.
Amazing. And I think just kind of touching on something you mentioned around the whole idea of post-pandemic, I think, and if anything, the pandemic showed us that the consumer wants and needs are constantly changing. So keeping your finger on the pulse and what KAM can offer is keeping your finger on that pulse is really, really valuable, and really actually in this current climate it's going to be a necessity. It's going to be essential to do that, to make sure the operators thrive. And I think on that same breath, I think it'd be really great to see what you think, and for how can Bums on Seats and KAM really work together to tackle these issues that everyone's talking about that hospitality is facing.
Well, I say this phrase quite often, and I know I'm probably not supposed to, which is there are some good things that have come out of this global pandemic. And one of the things that I would want to point to, one of the results I want to point to, is this idea of strength in collaboration. We saw it during the pandemic. We saw, rival food service firms joining together to make sure that they could get out there what needs to be got out there to the people that were shielding in their homes. We saw, particularly, in fact, us ourselves, we worked with other research companies, we worked with other insight companies, because I think there comes a time, and I think that time was the pandemic, where you realize that, if you get people together, then it's greater than the sum of its parts. Mm-hmm. And the fact is that we have the consumer insight and that knowledge, and Bums have that expertise to take that knowledge and put it into practice and actually action the insight that we give. And I think that is where I hope we work, even better together in 2023.
Yeah, I would totally agree with you there. I think we can read, because a lot of time, sometimes that can be a lot of marketers, for example. I know they get a lot of information and it's about how do you action it, and as we know, because of the current climate, there's a lot to do. So it's how do you help prioritize it, and Bums on Seats can really help deliver that and start to increase in sales essentially. Mm-hmm. And I think where Bums on Seats and KAM also kind of work together is our the level of insight that we can also give back and from a benchmarking perspective, really helping understand the, the sector. We've worked together before last year on looking at insight into competitive socializing, and I think a lot of that will continue to happen this year. So watch this space, I think.
Absolutely.
Is what we're saying.
A collab, a KAM bum collab.
Of course. And I think what I really want to know as well from you, Katy, is really I really want to know, in your opinion, with all your level of expertise, what would you be saying to operators? What top 3 things would you say that operators and the industry as a whole can do to not only survive but thrive?
Oh goodness. Okay. My first. Look, this will always be the first point that I will make. I run an insight consultancy. Of course, I'm going to make this point. But whether you do it with us or whether you do it with somebody else, please, please, please obsess about your customer.
Yeah.
As you just mentioned, Ed, the customer is constantly changing. I shot quite a few people down during the pandemic when they said, "What's the new customer going to be like?" And my point is, we don't know, you don't know. And also, there is no such thing as the new customer. This customer, post-pandemic, is evolving quicker and more often than we could ever have expected. So you need to obsess about the customer, put this customer at the center and the heart of every strategic decision that you make as a business. Now, that's not just whether you're an operator, but also if you're a supplier, if you're one of the drinks manufacturers, etc., you need to know who your operator clients' customers are, not just who your operator client is, but who their customers are. So I think that would be my first point to make. My second point, which is a bit of a twist on, I think, a reasonably well-known phrase, which is perfection is the enemy of innovation. I think the original phrase is perfection is the enemy of good. But there is no room for good at the moment. Mediocre and good no longer exist in this industry. We have to be great, but we don't have to be perfect. You still have to have the guts to get out there and try things. You still need to look at what you're providing, whether it's as an operator or as a supplier, and how can you change that? How can you shift that? How can you make that attractive to more people? Or on the opposite side of things, how can you narrow what you have as an offering down to one specific type of customer? But don't wait for it to be perfect, because there is no such thing as perfect. And if you wait for it to be perfect, the moment will be gone and you will have lost that speed that we're used to in hospitality for the innovation that we introduce. And then my third point would be, and actually this is kind of to everybody in the industry that we know and love, don't forget to celebrate the small wins. It's going to be freaking hard out there over the next year or two, and every little win is going to count. And we need to make sure that we're saying, well done to ourselves and to our teams and to our industry colleagues. When something goes right, even if it's small, make sure you celebrate it, because otherwise, where's the joy?
Exactly. Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think there's a lot to be said about celebrating the small wins. It's so easy to jump from one thing to the next, onto the next thing, and it's really, to your point around keeping innovative. I think it's really key. It's tempting to keep jumping, but to celebrate the small wins is really valuable. And I think your 3 tips are amazing there. Making sure that you're really paying attention to your customer and really getting involved in understanding who they are and what their behaviors are is really key. And I think one of the best things, to your second point, I think one of the best things about hospitality is how creative everyone is. And I think if we lose that spark and lose that energy, as you said, lose that pace, then you're gonna be missing out. And I think it's really important to enjoy what we do. Hospitality is meant to be fun, right? We're meant to be getting people into our venues and getting themselves to enjoy themselves, and obviously then celebrating that. I think that's amazing. So thank you so much for those. It was really insightful, and thank you so much for your time, Katy. I know you're a busy woman. But yes, all those top tips that we've just been talking about, as well as the others that we're going to be doing with other partners, we'll all be putting into a guide, into a document that's free for hospitality operators. But if anyone would like any more information on KAM or Bums on Seats, or how KAM and Bums on Seats can work together to help you and help your venues, then please do reach out to either Katy at kam-media.co.uk, or reach out through LinkedIn, and vice versa. Please come and contact me through LinkedIn as well. But once again, thank you so much, Katy, for your time. It's been a pleasure chatting to you, and I look forward to seeing you soon.
Fabulous. Thank you so much for having me, Ed.
Of course.